think we're going to get started. Thank you all for coming. It's great to be in the Red Hook Community Center. Sarah, thank you for hosting us today. I've had the honor of attending this in the village of Millbrook, and it's a really great session and a great opportunity to learn a little bit about what the Comptroller's Office does and why it's so important. In Dan's case, we've been working together for 10 months now. It seems like much longer than that. This role is so important to Dutchess County taxpayers as an independent watchdog to make sure that our tax dollars are going to where they are meant to go and doing the things they are meant to do to work as hard as possible for us as a county. And the reports that Dan and his team have done just in this very short period of time have been hugely valuable, not only to our taxpayers, but as a legislator in the Dutchess County Legislature, hugely valuable to us as well. So I'm very happy to have Dan in Northern Dutchess, and over to you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming today. I'm Dan Blair, Dutchess County Comptroller, and you are here for a Comptroller's Town Hall. Very exciting people. So I put some information up here, just kind of for folks to look at as they came in. This is some interesting information that we have about Red Hook. I'm going to have to move along now, but I can put that up again at the end if you want to look at any of those figures. All right, so the idea for the Comptroller's Town Hall came to me last year because last year when I was introducing myself to voters, I found very commonly that what I had to do is I also had to introduce the office of the Comptroller to voters before I talked about who I am and what I could bring to it. And this really began with my mother, the very first person who I told I was running. It's like after my wife, sorry. And my mother said, "Oh, honey, I'm so proud of you." And then she goes, "What is that anyway?" And all year I was talking about what a controller is. And so I thought that an important service that we could provide from the Office of the Comptroller is setting some basic understanding for the public about what we do and why it's important. So we're going to jump right in here. So the number one question we have, right, is what is a controller? So according to the Charter of Dutchess County, which is effectively our Constitution, we have an independent controller who serves as the chief auditing officer, the chief accounting officer. And the point of the controller's office is not to make policy or to choose where money is spent or to budget money or any of those things, or even to find funding. The job of the controller's office is to oversee the ledger, to oversee the finances and making sure that everything is adding up correctly and that everything is done according to plan. And this position was created with the Charter of 1968, which, if I recall correctly, also created the county executive and the county legislature in the same year. And I think before that we might have had a board of supervisors set up. But the controller was set up as independent from the county executive. I'm elected directly by the people. And we'll talk a little bit in a second about why that's important. But I want to say also that there's a question I get often about this crazy word, controller, which I've heard pronounced comptroller, controller. Who knows? I'd say controller. It comes from the French. Comptoir is to count. And we have, we're counting the rolls, counting the ledger. The Anglification of that is controller, C-O-N-T. And I don't think controller is a title we want to have in government, at least not local government. But we have, it sounds like an extraordinarily powerful position. In the private sector, you'll see the controller term commonly. So, the controller is independent. And what does that mean and why is it important? So, because I report directly to the people, I'm doing the people's work. I'm not doing the county executive's work and I'm not doing the county legislature's work. If I were to report directly to the county executive, that would look like me being involved in policy making and then turning around and doing oversight on the policy that I just created. And that's not how this works. We have a budget director in Dutchess County, we have a director of finance, and we have a controller. And the controller plays a distinct role, which is oversight. And it would be very difficult to do this job if it was set up any other way. And that objective eye that the controller has to bring to things means that we're not involved in, like I said, not involved in any of the policy making, and we are just looking at things for truly what they are. We're looking at the facts. And one of the things that is most important is we are reviewing policies and procedures. We're thinking of best practices, what's the best guidance available for different types of financial operations, and we make those recommendations to the county executive and to the county legislature. When we release a report, the first people who get it are the county executive and the county legislature. This is an essential check and balance. Checks and balances has been an essential part of American governance since the forming of the Republic. And checks and balances is good government, and it's an American value. And in the Comptroller's office, we provide an essential checks and balance on the financial side, on the financial operations side of things. Also in the Comptroller's office, we are thinking about the big picture. You know, we're looking at the long-term health of the economy, and you know, obviously baked into that also is the long-term finances for the county. All of this comes together. The Comptroller is there to weed out waste, abuse, and mismanagement. And we'll get into what that actually looks like in a second. So first of all, what are the people in the Comptroller's office even doing, right? So there's 13 of us on the 4th floor of the county office building. What are we doing? The main thing that we're doing in our office is invisible to the public largely, and that is claims auditing. Almost all of the work that we do, I would say probably 60–70% of the work that we do. In January and February, it's all the work that we do, is claims auditing. Claims auditing is essentially paying the bills in layman's speak. It's reviewing all of the invoices and all of the payments and making sure that they're being done appropriately. We're not checking whether there's something that we would have done. We're not checking to see whether it's something that we like or dislike. We're just checking to make sure that it was done correctly. The work that the office does that is probably most public-facing and most kind of associated with the Office of the Comptroller are the reports that we put out. And I'll talk about reports in some detail. I'm going to share the findings and recommendations of 3 reports. But we have here basically an opportunity for the people who are paying the bills and the people who are looking at our financial operations to identify patterns and trends that people who are out in the public may not be able to do through a FOIL request. We have unfettered access to all the public information within the government, and we know what questions to ask. So then what we do is we pull together a summary report that will be interesting to the public and helpful to your policymakers, other elected officials. We also provide information to the public. All of the information in the Comptroller's office is public information. These are public records, and everything we do giving this information back to the public is a public service. And we're here, I report to you and I give information back to you. And if you want a controller that's giving you a different information or another way, you choose another controller. And the information that we share, like I said, can be anything from basic information, simple charts and infographics we might throw up on social media, or it's going to be an extensive report. Also, an important point of clarification here is that the Comptroller's office reviews expenditures. So we see all of the money going out of the county. It's the Department of Finance on the other end of the 4th floor that watches all of the money coming in. We do reporting on revenue. However, we have to work closely with finance to understand it very well. And who's doing it? We have 13 staff, including myself. There's 3 appointed positions in the office: the Deputy Comptroller, Mr. Brian Kelly, who's joining us in the back today, Director of Audit, and the Executive Assistant to the Comptroller. And then we have civil servants. We have 6 auditors. And we have 3 people working on that are account clerks. So claims auditing, I'll dig into this a little bit more. So we review every payment going out of the county. And what are we reviewing it for? We're not reviewing it for the substance. That is, we're not, like I said, we're not looking to agree or disagree with a payment. That's not what we do. What we do is we check to make sure that the payment is being done appropriately. So an invoice crosses the desk of someone in my office, and what they do is they check to make sure that there's a contract for that work, if that's what's needed. They check to see if we have the right pricing. These line items that are covered in this contract. And then we also want to know that the goods and services were actually delivered, right? So this is an interesting example to come up. We have an interesting example that's come up right now. So we are starting to see in the last few weeks tariff fees showing up on invoices. And so what we do when we see those tariff fees is we go to the contract to make sure that that's something that we can pay under that contract. And if the contract is written very specifically with a very clear scope of services saying, these are the units that you're paying for, this is the price of those units and how many, etc., we're less likely to have to pay for a tariff fee if that's the case. If your contract is written vaguely and it is kind of open-ended and just says $2 million for this kind of service, it's very hard to make an argument that we can't pay that. So these are the kinds of things that we are looking at in the Comptroller's office. We approve purchase orders and vouchers, purchase orders for goods, vouchers for services. We review contracts for proper configuration, like I was just mentioning. We look at budget transfers and resolutions. So if a team wants, they have money for supplies, but now they need money for professional services, we would be the ones who approve that. We also review all resolutions before the county legislature to make sure that the general ledger lines are all correct in the law, in the resolution. Related auditing tasks that aren't exactly claims auditing but are similar, we review payroll and we review employee allowances. So if you have folks in public works who are entitled through their contract to have steel-toed boots, we make sure that we go back and look at the labor contract and make sure that reimbursement is being done correctly. And we also review P-card purchases. P-card purchases are essentially on procurement cards that the commissioners carry or people in their office carry to make smaller purchases, emergency purchases, and it's definitely an interesting place for a controller to spend time looking, and we will be in the near future. So that's the claims auditing side of things. Now we have the more public-facing part of the work that our office does, and we do two different types of reports. There's informational reports and audit reports. An informational report is a review of public information on a specific topic to tell a story from which we might learn a lesson. And this is less rigorous than an audit report. An audit report is really digging into the numbers and checking facts and digging into things. This is more putting together a narrative or summarizing a topic, primarily for the public, but also for policymakers, because we are always going to focus on things where there might be something that we can learn from it. We're not going to just do reports on any old thing. We're going to do things where we might be able to glean some lessons. And some of the recent reports we've done, and I'll dig into a couple of these for you, is we finished spending our COVID-19 money back in December, or we finished encumbering our COVID-19 money in December, which meant that we were ready to do a review of how our COVID-19 spending went. We did a Comptroller's report, which basically just means a report that I chipped in on. We did a report on the Youth Opportunity Union, which was a community facility that was supposed to replace the YMCA of Dutchess County, but never materialized. We wanted to answer the question, why didn't it happen, and we did. And then we have coming up very soon the People's Annual Financial Report, which is a summary of our audited financials that's easily digestible for the public and has a lot of other interesting information kind of thrown in, and it's very well designed and easy to read, and we kind of make it more digestible for the public. And then the other type of reporting that we do is audit reports, and these are an audit report is much more rigorous. We're looking deep into the policies and procedures, whether they're being followed, whether the policies and procedures are adequate enough. We have different types of programs, for example, where financial transactions are happening outside of our system of record. Those are definitely something that we're going to audit. So the jail commissary is an example of that. We look at county departments. Some of the reasons we might look at a county department might be they have a change in leadership, for example. So when District Attorney Anthony Parisi got into office, he went to the Comptroller and said, will you please audit me? I'm the first new District Attorney in a really long time. I need to know what I need to do to get my financial operations in order and have adequate policies and procedures. And they did. We look at contract agencies. These are typically nonprofit partners who are providing services for the county. Because there's county dollars flowing through those contract agencies, we want to make sure that those dollars are being spent wisely and being used correctly after they're out the county's door. We look at major capital projects. This is something that we're always going to do. Anytime we're looking at a major capital project, we're looking at very high costs. We're looking at something that takes a lot of planning, a lot of funding, creative financing. This is definitely the type of, usually these are projects that take over years and are certainly funded over longer periods of time. And this is exactly the type of thing you would want to have a controller looking over in a One example that we have up here is the Justice and Transition Center, which is effectively the jail in the city of Poughkeepsie, and the Sheriff's Office. And the Justice and Transition Center was something that we were reviewing on a periodic basis, and we just put out a recent report. Now that the prisoners have moved into the facility, the inmates have moved in. We also have mandated reports. That jail commissary report is an example. We also have some reports called maintenance in lieu of rent, and we have the indirect cost allocation plan. These are probably the least interesting reports we do to the public, but they're super important because when we go out and we apply for grants, we also want to make sure that our administrative costs that aren't fixed directly to that project are going to be covered as well. And we need to determine and be able to verify and back up what those administrative costs are when we're applying for a grant. And then, of course, we do we will do an audit report by request. When I got into office in January, even when I was running last year and even when I was sworn in, this was a part of my speech, I said, an audit's not a bad thing. The way that we talk about audits, and at least in Dutchess County, it's always made to sound partisan, like the Comptroller has a weapon called an audit, and he can point it at anybody. And that's just really not the case. Anybody who works in this industry understands that an audit is something that you want, and it's something that's helpful. Because when you're done, it's going to be a lot of work and you're going to have to get involved with us. But when we're done, you're going to have a list of things that you can do to improve your organization and to improve your operations. So when I came in January, I went around to every single commissioner and I said, what can I audit for you? How can I help? What do you need me to look at? And, that's my approach to auditing, and anybody I know who works in this line is in this line of work thinks of it the same way. Other activities of the office, so we do public surveys, at least I know of one that we've done. Earlier this year, we had an instance where the new White House announced that they were going to be suspending federal disbursements for further review. And there was a lot of outcry about what that meant, for our municipalities, for our county, for our nonprofits. Everybody was really hitting the button. I actually happened to be at the Government Finance Officers Association in February, and it was nonpartisan concern. Government finance officers were concerned regardless of their party. And it was just something that, at the local level, at the municipal level, these are people who are so responsible for balancing the books. So their heart was in their throat. They were really worried. And what happened was, after we did a report about where the county's federal funding comes from, people started coming out of the woodwork to tell us that they lost their money or they lost their job, and we couldn't really keep up with it because I was, just trying to settle in at that time. So we did a survey, and what we found from that survey was that we lost $12.5 million of investment in Dutchess County from the federal government, but not from that OMB memo, but from other executive orders and other acts of the White House. We do a lot of vendor management, so we are always pushing to get our vendors on electronic deposit, and we do the 1099s at the beginning of the year. We coordinate with the Office of the State Comptroller, who we're very happy to have here today, Gabby, representing the Office of the State Comptroller. If you have not checked yet, you may have unclaimed funds with the Office of the State Comptroller, so make sure you see Gabby before you leave. We answer FOIL requests specific to the functions of our department. And I am also the chair of the Independent Auditing Committee, and we finished up that work last Monday. We signed off on the 2024 audited financials, and that is submitted to the state now. And we have public events and information sessions like this today, and we've done others in the past. So let's dig into a few of the reports that we've done this year. So like I was saying, in January, late January, a memo from the Office of Management and Budget came from the White House saying that they were suspending all federal disbursements for further review. And like I said, we had a big outcry and people were really concerned, and we thought, okay, well, this is a perfect opportunity for you, an informational report, to answer this question for the public. And it was very simple because it was information that already was available to the public. And so what we did was, the question was that we kept getting was, how much federal money do we get each year? And what we said is that's not exactly the right question, because sometimes you'll get a big grant in 1 year, but you have 5 years to spend it. So what we decided to do is we decided to look at our audited financials, where we have what's called the Schedule of Expenditures of Federal Awards, and it's called the CFA. And we already had that out in the public, And what that is how we spend federal dollars each year, which we thought was the more appropriate way to answer that question that people had. And the answer to that was 2023 was the most recent year where we had audited financials at the time we did the report. We found that we had $65 million in 2023, not including COVID-19 money, representing 10% of the budget. And in 2024, I think it came out to 67 million, so we're still right on track. 2/3 of that money comes from Health and Human Services. So this is actually direct aid, not necessarily direct to individuals, but aid direct to the community. The top 5 programs we're talking about here is TANF, which is essentially the welfare program that was, the welfare was replaced in the 90s with this program after Gingrich and Clinton came up with the deal to add work requirements. It's public transit, it's home energy assistance, medical assistance, and adoption assistance. The adoption assistance, people often ask about that. That's actually quite a bit of money. I want to say it was about $3.5 million, and that's to aid families who want to adopt a child with special needs. Children with special needs are very hard to find a permanent home, and sometimes the family needs to get assistance, equipment, etc. Entitlements. So we also looked at entitlements, which was very interesting. We wanted to know how much was coming in to Dutchess County by way of Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, veterans insurance, and other things. And we found that $3.25 billion comes into Dutchess County through those programs. And so when we hear about cuts or changes to any of these programs, for example, additional paperwork requirements, work requirements, whatever they may be, we would have to wonder what just a fraction of $3.25 billion might mean for Dutchess County's economy. We also did a report this year, as I mentioned. Once we finished up with the COVID-19 in December of 2024, it was a perfect opportunity for us to look back and see how that money was spent. We received $57 million in Dutchess County, to the Dutchess County government for COVID-19 relief. And by and large, it was used for its intended purposes. We had youth programming, we had emergency communications, we were supporting nonprofits, all sorts of great programs that, and institutions that we want to keep afloat through the pandemic. What we found in that report also was that of the original plan in 2021, only 54% of that original plan was actually executed. And we look at the program year to year in the report, and you can see different things being put into the COVID-19 money and taken out. Some of the things that have been in there, for example, were we had the Housing Trust Fund that was included in there. The Housing Trust Fund isn't really the right thing that you want to have, you want to be spending grant money on. So, this money was going to time out, so there were other programs where the funding was going to continue past December 2024. And all in all, the remainder of the funding was used to fulfill educational obligations that the county has, particularly to the community college, that we typically pay out of our tax levy. We also saw that there was some spending on stadium improvements for the minor league baseball stadium down in Fishkill, and we also had some real estate projects at the Youth Opportunity Union and the 26 Oakley Street project come out of the COVID-19 fund, which were technically in line with the grant or with the award and was allowable, but I don't know that it was exactly the right reason, the right way to use COVID-19 money. A recent report we had out over the summer was very interesting. We did this report on the Youth Opportunity Union. In the city of Poughkeepsie, where they built a jail and are now planning to build a homeless shelter, the county executive 5 years ago promised to build a community center that would replace the old YMCA of Dutchess County, which had fallen into disrepair and was condemned. And the YMCA lot had been there for about 10 years, 11 years, and they just could not rehabilitate this property. So the county came in and said, look, we'll do this for you. And so the county bought the property, the YMCA of Dutchess County, 35 Montgomery Street, from the city of Poughkeepsie for $10, which isn't unheard of, and promised to appropriate $25 million to taking down the old YMCA and beginning the process of putting in a replacement facility. And there was a lot of excitement at the time. There was a lot of press releases and press conferences and such, and outreach sessions. And basically what happened was the county executive went to the architects and said, you know, we really want to do something special for the city of Poughkeepsie, you know, give us a cathedral to children. And they had all these nonprofit partners involved in the project, all of whom had ideas of what could go into this facility that they could support. And the architect came back with a plan that was $165 million. And what happened was, over the course of a few years, they slowly pulled out different projects to reduce the cost. So when you take out, you know, the black box theater, or you take out the climbing wall, you also take out the nonprofit partner that was associated with those projects. And so over the last few years, and over the course of 3 county executives, the scale of the project diminished over time. And now, the latest proposal that I'm aware of, though I hear there's another one out there, the last one that I saw in any publicly verifiable record, was a $40 million facility with 2 pools in it, a competitive pool and a family pool, to go on the 35 recovery site. And basically what happened here was that the county only ever appropriated $8.5 million. And of that $8.5 million, only spent that $4.5 million demolishing the old YMCA and on architectural and engineering fees, which was about 50-50 roughly of that $4.5 million. The architectural fees and engineering fees seem high, but keep in mind that the architectural firm that was hired is the lead agency, and so there were other vendors working under them, engineers, etc. But they were also asked to do about 7 or 8 versions of this project. So what the ultimate finding of this was that you need, if you're going to make an announcement like this and you're going to have a project of this scale, is that you need to have a plan and you need to have the funding. But what I also think is interesting about this, and I'm going to hold here for a second, because I actually think the Youth Opportunity Union report that we did potentially tells an important story about the importance of the Comptroller's office. You know, in the partisan world, you know, you could argue that, oh, the county executive from one party wasn't executing on this project for the people, and the comptroller from another party decided to do an audit report as an attack, and this isn't the way this works at all. What we did was a report so that we could refocus the county's attention on a promise that they had already made. And what happened 4 days after our report came out, and our report got a fair amount of press, after our report came out, the county executive had Public Works over cleaning up that location because it had fallen into a bit of a mess. They were over there getting out all the weeds, fixing the fencing, etc. And then also began renegotiating what this facility could be. And so if everybody in the county government does their part, this works, right? The comptroller is there to say, hey everybody, don't forget, you made a promise over here and you got to keep it. And if the county executive is doing their part, they're going to say, oh, thanks for the reminder, comptroller. We're going to put our attention towards that in the next budget. So we'll see where this all goes, but I think there's an important lesson to be learned from this. Recent and upcoming reports, we recently had our jail commissary report out, our maintenance in lieu of rent report. We have another one that just came out. We did a review of the Learn, Play, and Create micro grant program in Dutchess County. We have this kind of popular model for programming called micro grants. We have municipal investment grants, which are funds that can be given to some of the towns and cities in Dutchess County and other municipal fire districts, etc. APG is the agency partner grant, so this is funding to help nonprofit partners maybe complete a facility or put in a handicap grant. And then we also had Learn, Play, and Create, which was for youth programming through COVID-19. And what we found with this was that, what we basically found out was, you know, it taught us lessons about why in government we always pay for goods and services after they're delivered. When you hire an electrician, you don't give them the money up front and then hope they did a good job. You're going to wait for them to finish and flick the light switch, make sure the lights come on, and then you give them the money, right? So we do the same way in government. In this case, because it was COVID-19 money and there was some urgency, I think they made the right decision giving the money up front. I think they could have done it in a different way. But what happened was a lesson, is they have to reconcile all of these accounts. There were 219 awardees, and not a small fraction of them did not spend the money according to the plan, or didn't spend all of the money. And so we have to recoup those funds. And that is a really long administrative process. There's still projects where we're recouping the money, and these last awards went out in 2022. So we also found in the Learn, Play, and Create report a finding that we have with most of our reports, which is that the contracts between us and the partners were not actually signed and executed before the work began, and in some cases before the before invoices were sent. Actually, in Learn, Plan, Create, there weren't invoices, but it's a typical thing that we see in the county. Upcoming, we actually finished our Justice and Transition Center report. This is, like I said, this is the jail in the sheriff's office. We were hoping that this was going to be our last report on the Justice and Transition Center because the inmates moved in last spring, 2024. And what we found, however, is that on the campus, on the sheriff's campus, there are these what's called pods, which is a temporary facility for homeless people now. We have about 190 to 100 people over there, and those pods are actually on the part of the lot where we need to go in and underneath and do a lot of water and stormwater management. So this project is not going to be done until we find a solution to move, a place to move those 100 homeless folks. We have a very interesting report coming out soon. I was just working on this morning. The final of a three-part series about capital projects. And we have coming up a report about debt servicing. We're going to try to answer the question for the public. How much do we pay down our debt every year? How much do we pay in principal and interest? What does it look like in the future? How does debt servicing work? We answer all of those questions for the public. And then what are the projects that we're paying down right now, right? So, for example, that JTC project, usually the bonding for these larger projects lasts for the length of the usable life of that facility or whatever is being built. So in the case of the JTC, we'll probably be paying that off until 2048. We also have the indirect cost allocation plan coming out, which I can't imagine we would want me to talk about twice. And we have a bunch more on the way. So, looking back at 2024, we had a $600 million budget. And in 2025, we have a $630 million budget. And an interesting thing about 2024 was that the budget was built around a sales tax rate that never came to be. In 2023, the Dutchess County Legislature voted in favor of a sales tax increase. However, in New York State, the right for a county to levy sales taxes comes from the state. In fact, the original reason that we do sales taxes in our county is because during the Great Society, the state gave counties permission to raise money because there was going to be all these additional social services. So that the home rule vote never happened in Albany, so the sales tax rate was a little lower. So we fell short in our sales tax revenue, but not by a lot because our budget director rightly estimates sales taxes conservatively. So we only fell about $3 million short, which would have been more than enough, easy enough to cover with our fund balance. However, remember when I was talking about our COVID-19 money and how some of that money was used, some of the COVID-19 money was used to cover our education obligation? You know, these are the kinds of things that we can do to balance the budget. So, the 2024 budget. So, it's probably hard for you to see, so I'm going to do my best here. But the third to the bottom line there is non-property tax items. Non-property tax items include property tax or sales taxes and use taxes, like cannabis taxes. And then the bottom line there is our property taxes. Now, you can see here that we collect much more in sales tax than we do in property tax, 3 times as much as we do. And that's common in our region. But the reason that I bring it up is not just because, you know, with property taxes, we can estimate property taxes for next year. We have a good idea of what the assessed value of all the properties are in Dutchess County. And we can kind of count on that. And the variable between estimates of property tax collection and the actuals is usually not a whole lot. Sales tax is really difficult to predict because I don't know whether you're going to buy a car this year. I don't know whether you're going to buy a dishwasher this year. I don't know if you're going to go on vacation or your family's going to come vacation here. So this is the part that is less predictable. So when you have your tax portfolio so heavily in sales taxes, as many of our neighbors do, it just means that we're more susceptible to boom and bust cycles. This is the opposite for cities and towns, by the way, who rely more on property taxes and grants. So, you know, this is why we watch sales tax collection so closely in our office, because it's an indicator not just of what's going on in our economy, but also what's our budget performance going to be for that year. On the expenditure side, you see the largest thing here is economic assistance and opportunity. This is mostly social services, Office of the Aging, and then down at the bottom here you have general government support, which is the second largest line. General government support is basically our administrative costs. So for example, the Office of the Comptroller is not we are not working on a specific program. We are a general support to the entire county. So we fall in under general government support. And then you can see under here benefits, which is largely pensions, public safety, which is mostly the sheriff's office, and health up at the top, health and mental hygiene. So what's on our radar? What are we paying attention to? So we are looking at federal money still. We're always keeping an eye on that. All part of the economic outlook. As I mentioned, we're watching sales tax receipts. I'm always keeping an eye out for tariff impacts, and when I'm talking to small business owners and business owners, I'm always asking them if they're seeing any impact from tariffs. And by and large, I would say most business owners are telling me that they're not feeling an impact. But most people understand, you look at, you go to your diner and suddenly one of those typical staples on the diner menu is $30. We know something's going on. You go to the supermarket, prices are high. There's a lot of different ways that tariffs can impact us. We have some employers in Dutchess County who are heavily dependent, big employers are heavily dependent on import and export. And so we're very concerned and just watching how tariffs are going to impact our big employers. 2024 audited financials, as I mentioned, we just finished that off last week. And county contract processes, I'm talking about this phenomenon where we have, you've heard me talk about a few of the phenomena really, which is that we have contracts that are being executed after the work began. In some cases, we've seen contracts weren't even requested until the work began. We have issues around the vagueness of the writing of some of the contracts. We've had a contract where we actually could not audit because it was written so vaguely that we actually had to kick the payment back and say, sorry, we just weren't able to confirm this against the contract that it's performed under. So we do have some issues with contracts, and we don't only do reports when we see a problem. We also work with our colleagues in the county government when we have a problem. So, I reached out to the county attorney and I put forward some ideas where we could shorten the timeline it takes to do a contract and get to the execution of a contract, but also that we could give guidance to department heads about when they should begin the contracting process. All very solvable problems. I've actually, the problems that we have here, I never saw once in New York City Department of Education, where I worked before. Property purchases has been a focus of ours. It seems to be a theme in the last 5 years that when certain problems were addressed through real estate purchases and hoping that a facility could address the need. We have 26 Oakley Street in downtown Poughkeepsie. We have Camp New Teaming up in Pleasant Valley, which is a campground that the county purchased for $4.8 million. Didn't really have a plan, didn't really have a goal, didn't do an RFP, didn't look at other campgrounds. So that's obviously something of great interest to us. We talked about the Youth Opportunity Union, and there's a few others. And then transparency and accessibility. This is, it's the last 3 words of this PowerPoint, but it's actually the most important thing to me. My philosophy that I bring to this office is that, as I said before, we have a public good in our office that needs to be returned to the public. This is a public good, the information that we have. And I really believe that transparency is a fundamental part of what the Comptroller's office is to do, is to shine a light on what's going on in the county. So we do this work, we do it for policymakers, we do it for managers, people who want to make their departments and the county overall work better, but it's also because this information is really important to people who are funding it, which is you, the taxpayers. So, when we talk about a project that was $4.8 million, and go back and think what what the county portion of your property tax bill was, think about how many people funded that $4.8 million campground, right? So, as for accessibility, another thing that's important to me is that people actually see the reports, and this is also for my auditors. I don't want their work them to finish up their work. A PDF goes up on a website, and then we move on to the next thing, and nobody ever sees it. So we've been trying to get the word out, and we've been really trying to make this information more accessible to people. So banking on the idea that not everybody's reading our reports as soon as they come out, though I have met a few of you out there. Not everybody has time in this life to sit down and read a 25-page PDF about the county's finances. But I bet you have time to watch a 90-second Instagram with the highlights, and then you can go and read the report if you seem to be interested in the topic. So that's what we've been doing. Every time we release a report, we put out a little 90-second thing on Instagram and Facebook to give the highlights. Also, in doing these reports, we have to use very precise language. In fact, when we have the whole team together, or we're reviewing reports together, we're really focusing on how to find the most precise language. Anybody who's been an attorney understands, understands the importance of getting words very, very right. But what that also means is that we have to select words that the average person doesn't know if they don't work in finance. So we added glossaries of terms to our reports at the end, so people could, kind of look up and see what an encumbrance is, for example, or a disbursement. And there we go. So here's some contact information if anybody here wants to do some follow-up. We have, are always open to tips and questions about the oversight that we're doing. And of course, we can do FOIL requests, and that's how you can reach us and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Great ways to keep in touch with our reports. If you go to our website, which is duchessny.gov, and go to the County Comptroller, you can also sign up to get our press releases. If you have policy questions, those will go to the county executive and the county legislature. They're the ones who set the policy, and of course we do the oversight. And with that, I think I'll put it back to the red hook slide, which probably has numbers that I cannot at this moment back up. But in case you're interested, I'm glad to answer any questions about anything in the presentation or anything about the county's budget or anything that you'd like. So, what questions do you have?
There was one bullet, it was maintenance in lieu of rent.
Yes.
I'm not sure, I didn't follow that.
Yeah, I think we have the report in the back. It's a hard one to get people to be interested. It's a report that feeds into our indirect cost allocation plan. And basically what we're looking at is how much do we pay in rent on some things and how much are we paying for maintenance, the upkeep on other things. So we have the maintenance of those properties and those facilities that we occupy, and we have to calculate those costs. All of that kind of feeds into our general administrative costs. If the report's not back there, it's one of the more recent reports, and it'll be easy to find at the top of the website. It's really technical. The indirect cost allocation plan is even more so. It's just 150 pages of tables of figures. But we actually hire somebody from outside to do that work, somebody who specializes in calculating indirect costs. And that's how it all comes together. I hope that's helpful. Yeah.
Dan, you noted that 68 million goes toward public safety. Any idea roughly how much of that goes to the sheriff's office?
I don't right now.
Yeah.
Easy enough to look up.
Yeah, I'm just curious, like the split between like sheriff's office versus like EMS or.
Yeah, I don't have that handy right now.
Okay.
We're actually using in putting together that slide. We're using the kind of the broader categories that the county executive uses in their budget presentation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
The deputy sheriffs and the sheriff's staff, not the corrections officers, is about 25 million. That's just the personnel.
Got it.
Then there's correction officers.
Okay. All right.
Because if you look at the sheriff's office in the budget, it's like all encompassing for the jail and everything else.
Thank you.
Just for those who don't know, that's one county legislator helping another.
Thank you.
When you took office, what did you find stepping in that you had to focus on right away?
Well, I mean, my priorities when I got into the office were really the staff. The staff had been through 2 turnovers in recent time, and I wanted to make sure that everybody was happy, that the work they were doing was aligned to their goals, and that I had a chance to get to know who they were. So that was my number one priority when I got into office. The office was closing out the 2024 books, so that also gave me a lot of time then to meet commissioners and start thinking about what audits we were going to do. I would say that most of the projects that I wanted to get off the ground this year were already on the audit docket and identified by the auditors as things that needed to be looked into. So it was nice to see that most of us were all on the same page about what needed to be looked into. I would say the things that I was surprised by was all of the stuff that we're talking about with contracts. That was really a surprise to me. I had some other things that I would have liked to have focused on, but these real estate projects are really a priority because they're big sums of money. So we really moved those up first. But there's other issues that I'm interested that may not be like super urgent, but one, for example, is artificial intelligence. The county is increasingly using AI. The sheriff is increasingly using AI. There's ways of looking at it through an audit to make sure that our contracts are written in a way that they have adequate privacy protections for the people of Dutchess County, and that's something that we could do a review of, and I'm interested in doing that next year. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Question, so we're so used to thinking about Red Hook from our perspective here in Red Hook, but you are looking at the whole county. So I'm wondering what you think about Red Hook in the context of the full county. Like, can you put us in context for ourselves? Like, what do you think, like, can you help us understand, like what do you think we are, I don't know what the right word is, because I know you're not part of policy decisions, but maybe from the audit perspective or whatever, like, what would you, if you were a Red Hook taxpayer, let's say, maybe think about, like, maybe in your reporting, or, you know what I mean? Like, what are some flags that might come up for you if you put your Red Hook hat on? You know what I mean? Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, I'll tell you, like, the most time I have conversations about this is how I'll kind of approach this question. So, the county provides a wide variety of services, from social services to busing, a number of things, mental health services. And I think the question that I get the most about this is, you know, people are asking how much is the town receiving in sales tax collection relative to economic activity, and how much are we receiving in sales tax collection relative to how much we are getting, and you know, like what is the balance, right? And so, you know, some of the questions we get are like, well, you know, if we're out here paying this many taxes, why don't we get more of this? You know, so I would say, like, out in Amenia, for example, you know, they used to have a bus. Now, if they want to get social services, they have to drive to Poughkeepsie. You know, so it's like, you know, you have a 40-minute drive now. If you want to go to the Social Security office, if you want to go to the VA, and you don't have a bus, you don't have access to Social Security or veterans benefits. So it's an interesting thing. I've actually played around with a little bit numbers. I was trying to look at all these micro grants and seeing where all the money is going, and see if there was a way to kind of like balance that out with, you know, like average income or population size. And I haven't really seen any patterns. It's also way more complicated than it sounds. But it's something that I think about occasionally, and we certainly get questions about that. If people in Red Hook, I would say the same thing to anybody. I would say, you know, what are you getting from the county? And if you're not getting what you think you should get from the county, you should demand it. And you should be looking at how much money is coming from the county into Red Hook relative to what Red Hook is putting out. What other questions do you have?
So the sales tax revenue that comes into Red Hook, that would then go into like the Red Hook, you know, general budget, and then would be dispersed according to however the budget is set for the town and the village?
The county's involvement ends with the cutting of a check.
Right.
And then what Red Hook does with their budget, they forecasted how much sales tax they expect to get. Mm-hmm. Just to clarify how sales tax works also, is sales tax is collected by the state, and then the money is given to the county, and then the county spreads it out to the towns and the cities. The Beacon and Poughkeepsie, the two cities, get the first bite at the apple, and then the rest is dispersed to the towns.
And how is the percentage determined for everybody?
It's quite sophisticated, but it begins with a negotiation between the two cities and the county. I don't have a lot of insight into how this process actually unfolds, but it's something that I might be interested in looking at the next time they renegotiate the sales tax deal with the cities. But I don't have the answer for that right now. Sorry.
I can put a little toward that. So there's money that's allocated, certain percentages go to the two cities because the cities have special taxing rights as cities versus towns and villages. So the cities negotiate certain share with the county for the overall sales tax. Then the remainder is spread throughout the towns, typically based on population, okay, more or less. But that negotiation happens like once every 10 years, so between the county and the city, so it can change over time. And then that goes to the locality, to the local municipality, and then it's part of their budget to be used for local stuff. Now, one of the important things to know is that, you know, there's other parts of the county that generate a lot more sales tax than Red Hook, for example. But it all goes into one pool for the county. So it's if 3 more stores open up here, it's not like that revenue comes directly to Red Hook. If, you know, some big facility opens in East Fishkill, we getting some benefit from our sales tax. So we're all in it together in that sense.
Right. So like the number one source of sales tax revenue in Dutchess County is car dealerships. And so if you have a town with a big population, but there's, you know, all the car dealerships on the other side of the border, you can see how it might be perceived that there's imbalances, but.
And if we go over to Ulster and we shop there, we don't get any of that sales tax.
Mhm.
Which, but conveniences with conveniences. Right.
Thank you.
So, does the village of Tivoli receive sales tax?
Good question. I don't know if villages. Yeah, villages get a disbursement. Yeah.
Because they're in the town of Red Hook, so you could add that to your slide in the future.
Oh,
As a trustee of the village of Tivoli,
yeah.
we would appreciate being reflected on the town slide in the future.
Well,
Sure.
So you had talked a little bit about how sometimes the work of the controller's office is seen as adversarial or punitive. I 100% get the idea that it's better to know than not know, or not be blind to it. Has anyone ever looked at? In the past X years, we've had, I would say, a long time Republican controller, party controller, and then a decent amount of the Democratic controller, and then now we've been sort of two transitionary periods here. Has there been a sense of how much, how many reports have been done or made public or done during those times? The controller's office is meant to be an independent operation, and I guess, and it's all politics at the same time. And so, just wondering if you can look at those things and say there's more productivity when, I almost want to say, when it's the adversarial party who's not trying to, who's doing it or not. I'm not sure if I explained that well.
Well, I don't know, I haven't really looked at that, but I have a lot of anecdotes that tell a different story. I've seen, I have access to communications to my predecessors, and I've seen some wild conversations between a Republican comptroller and a Republican county executive. Last year, I think the comptroller's office put out more reporting, or almost more reporting than ever before last year, and you had a Republican comptroller and a Republican county executive. And also, I do this work so I can make good government, not so I can blast Republicans. If we had a Dutchess County executive that was a Democrat, they would also probably be watching out for my emails as well, and my press releases as well. Yeah, I might disappoint them if they think they're going to have an easy ride. My goal is good government.
Good goal.
There's this kind of old, battle that we have. The only way to do more is to raise taxes, and and then if you're not raising taxes, you're doing less for the people, and whatever this classic argument in American politics has been. But people who are on the financial operations side of things, we always know there's a third way, which is if you have really good contracting and really good processes and you're really efficient, you can do much more with the budget you already have. And we see examples of that all the time.
I was at a Chamber of Commerce breakfast recently where the mayor of Poughkeepsie, Yvonne Flowers, and the mayor of Beacon spoke. I was really impressed with what the mayor of Beacon had to say about how Beacon has been sort of successful as a town in generating more property tax and sales tax. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what happened there, and how can we use that almost as a role model for what more for other parts of Dutchess County?
Sure. So the story of the city of Beacon, is everybody knows that knows that Beacon was all boarded up, and it wasn't a place you wanted to go, and then after DIA opened up, the art museum opened up in Beacon, that and other factors just really opened up a 25-year bonanza of growth. And the revenue that the mayor was talking about, he basically, when property tax is your main source of revenue, you're thinking about what's the most that you can get out of every lot, right? So if you have a lot that's unproductive and is just weeds, like 35 Montgomery Street, you don't really get a whole lot of tax revenue out of that. If you put a 2-story building on that, you're going to get more tax revenue out of it. If you have a 4-story building, you're going to get even more tax revenue out of it. And anybody who knows the story of Beacon is we built out to the gills. Every single empty lot in the city of Beacon is built on or is being built on right now, including down by the creek. This is the issue actually that got me into politics, because they were starting to build really close to the creek and some protected waterways. Beacon has had a building bonanza. It's allowed them to raise way more property tax than ever imagined, and also, what else do I want to say about it? More property tax collected, and yeah, I mean, it's been the project of multiple mayors, 3 or 4 mayors has been going on like this, and we don't even have to go to the tax cap, you know, because all this new construction allows us to raise all this new revenue, and actually other people, their tax rates might be, the amount of taxes that they're paying is going down. Sales tax is just an outcome of that, right? So we build all those new buildings and there's all these new shops, and you know, part of the story of Beacon also is that we had all these great shops that serve the people who live there, and there's still quite a few, but most of it now, like the east end of Main Street, mostly caters to weddings, and so it's like these high-end dresses and, I don't know, nail salons and all that. Like everything's gone from antique stores to like high-end art galleries, so you know, the amount of revenue coming out of each of those businesses is different. Why talk about this? Well, maybe there's some opportunity for the county at large to learn something from the lessons of the city of Beacon, which is that if you're going to build a lot of new housing, you might want to do it that's create housing that is an opportunity for the people that live there and isn't drawing people from outside. And you might want to have some regulations and some guardrails on what that economic development is going to look like. But I think, you know, this is the #1 need in Dutchess County, in New York, America, the world, is housing. There's just a lot of humans now. There's 8 billion of us now, and we all need homes. And one of the last really safe investment bets is housing, because stock market hasn't, well, the stock market's been pretty assured recently, but you know, there's just investments like savings and things used to be real surefire, you know, really secure investments, and it's not the same anymore. Housing is a way to generate revenue, you know? So we have to, I think we need to create a lot of, we have to create a lot of housing, but we need to be careful in finding ways of doing it in a way that's going to benefit the community and not disrupt the community. Yeah. Well, does anyone else have any other questions? I'm here all night. Well, thank you everybody for coming. I know this is, you know, Comptroller's Town Hall is probably not the most burning thing on the option tonight, but I really appreciate you coming and listening and being a part of this, and I appreciate your good questions as well. So if you have any questions that you want to ask me one-on-one, I'll hang back for a little bit and we can talk one-on-one on the side. Thanks so much for being here. And before you leave, make sure you stop and visit. Sorry, Gabby. I'm sending all of you to Gabby to see if you have unclaimed funds. So thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.